What's going on, everyone? I'm just a typical, average American here today to react and learn about games in the UK. And what we're really talking about here is classic board games. Apparently, they are in many ways similar between the US and the UK, and in many ways, these games are different. So today, I'm very interested in learning about more of these differences in games between here in America versus the UK. So let's take a look.
First up is this game. I bet you recognize it. I don't have to
Yes.
explain it. The origins go all the way back to ancient Egypt, but
What? What do you mean? Huh? No. I mean, if we're talking about classic games, does it get more classic than this? But what are we saying here? We're saying tic-tac-toe is different in the UK? Like, in what way? Like, you call it something else than tic-tac-toe? Everyone doesn't say tic-tac-toe? I've never felt so much like I wanted to say tic-tac-toe before. It's very satisfying right now. Surely the rules of this game and how it's played aren't different. There's no way. So the name is different?
it has different names in the US and the UK. Typically in the
Okay.
US, we call it tic-tac-toe.
Yes.
It's thought that this name comes from the 16th century, referring to an old version of backgammon, which was called tic-tac.
If this game's from the 16th century, you heard it here first. Not even my words. You hear her? It's tic-tac-toe for the last 400 years. So, what on earth is the UK calling this? I thought like chess, tic-tac, tic-tac-toe, right up there with chess. In how universally accepted and played it is. I wouldn't have thought tic-tac-toe had a different name in other countries.
It can also be called X's and O's, particularly in Canada and Ireland, but in the UK, it's called
Okay.
noughts and crosses. This is sort of self-explanatory to
What? Is it? Is this self-explanatory? Oh my gosh. So, when people out there in the UK see this board, here it is, you think, oh, knots and crosses. Knots and crosses? I understand the crosses. There's X's, which can be crosses. Fair enough. What's this knots? Knots? Like a knot in a rope? Like a shoelace? You tie a knot? Or a knot? Like, is that another word for zero? That might be another word for zero, which would be like this O shape. Knot. I've heard that. Is that what we're talking about? Is that where the knot comes from? Because I feel like I have heard knot. Like it can mean zero. It's not really used that way here in America, but I do feel like I might have heard that before.
but in the UK, it's called noughts and crosses. This is sort of self-explanatory to a British person because a knot in the UK is the digit 0, and then this X
It is. It is. All right. I mean, I'm actually kind of proud of myself. Like, I'm actually, like, able to reason my way through some of this and figure out what it is. Just through my own brain power. Big accomplishment for me. Knots. Yeah. Do you use the word knot very, very commonly in the UK to mean zero? Because, man, here in America, we only say zero. Like, we never say not. I don't even know where I've heard that before. Like, maybe in science circumstances, sometimes you hear that. Like, not .3 or something. Like, okay, knots and crosses. It's just tough for me, because in America, it's like, you're a little child, and you're taught tic-tac-toe. Now, the more I say that phrase, the more I'm like, why is it called tic-tac-toe? If you're a Brit And you're questioning us, Americans, like, noughts and crosses make some logical sense, but tic-tac-toe, what on earth does that mean? What does this have to do with toes? Or ticks or tacks, really? And I hear you. I mean, that's an argument.
X is also like easily identified as a cross, but interestingly, the word not is not usually used to mean the digit 0 or nothing in the US.
No.
So some Americans won't instinctively understand the not part of the UK name for this game unless you explain it to them.
Yeah, I was genuinely confused there for a second. But, yeah, I mean, arguably, I hate to admit it, maybe the British name makes more sense. Maybe it makes more sense. But apparently tic-tac-toe is like the more historical name. Or at least she said it was from the 1600s or something. So tic-tac-toe.
Next up is another fun naming difference, and that's that this playground item is called a jump rope in the US, but typically
Okay, tic-tac-toe I can accept. Noughts and crosses. Now we're getting into some real childhood, like nostalgia. Some pretty cherished childhood memories of jump rope. Jumping rope. You're jumping over the rope. The name of the game is what you do. What else could you possibly call it?
called a skipping rope in the UK. Next up is
Skipping rope. Skipping rope. I feel like I've heard that. Again, I don't know where. Same place I heard of knot is where I heard of skipping rope. That's a very British way. I feel like I've heard British people say that. Skipping rope. That I've heard that before. It just doesn't quite sound right to me, but do you skip over the rope or do you jump over the rope? That is the debate. So, I mean, I think you jump, but you can run. I mean, I can't believe... Honestly, I did not think I was going to get this much into the weeds and really dissect jumping rope and skipping rope on this level, but here we are. You can run with a rope and skip through it. But I think most of the time you're jumping. I'll accept knots and crosses, but I don't know if I can accept skipping rope. I'm sorry.
in the UK, you'll know this game as snakes and ladders, whereas in the US, we know it as chutes and ladders.
That's funny. I feel like I've heard of snakes and ladders as well, but in America, it's definitely chutes and ladders. I don't know why it's chutes and ladders. In America, we call these a slide, not a chute. I do not know why it's called chutes and ladders. It should be called like slides and ladders. So it doesn't even make much sense to begin with here. Snakes and ladders. Why are you're sliding down snakes in the UK, huh? What's that about? This one, I have no problem with either of these.
Now, I want you to think of the name for the game where you come up with a phrase or message and say it in the ear of the person next to you, who then only gets to listen to it one time typically, and then passes it on to the next person.
Okay. This is a game you play when you're a child. In America, it's called telephone.
It continues until the last person has to say what they thought they heard. If you're an American viewer, you likely have the name in your head right now and you're thinking telephone or broken telephone. If you're British,
What on earth could British people call this game? It's a game where you whisper a word into a person's ear, and that happens many, many times down a line of people, and by the end, the message is nothing like what it was in the beginning. I don't even know really why it's called telephone. You know what? I'll hand it to some of these videos. They do make me really stop and question some things about American culture that I've never thought about or questioned before. Why would we call this telephone? You're whispering in someone else's ear. It's really like, speaky into my ear. Is that what British people call it?
you probably have come up with Chinese whispers. It's the same exact game with different names. Telephone or broken telephone is pretty self-explanatory, I think.
Chinese whispers? Now, I understand the whisper part. Where does the Chinese part come from? Was this a Chinese game? What? I've never heard this phrase before.
But Chinese whispers, as the most common name used in the UK, Australia, and New Zealand, at least dates back to 1964, and it is still commonly used. However, it's generally considered a politically incorrect name these days. One suggestion for this name has to do with the British fascination with Chinese culture during the Enlightenment, but it probably has something to do with a Western belief in the 1800s that Chinese people spoke in a way that was deliberately unintelligible, and there are kind of undertones of paranoia here.
Ah, okay, because I was wondering. Because there's nothing wrong with, like, crediting China for inventing a game. If they invented this game, then it's like, okay, Chinese whispers, sure. Let's appreciate Chinese culture by putting it in the name. Nothing wrong with that. But if it's like, oh, Chinese whispers because I can't understand the words, just like I can't understand like Chinese words or Chinese English speakers or something like that, then it's like, yeah, that is not good. That's not good. So yeah, I'm not sure. Is the name of this game considered like racist or something, or like improper? Like in America, we have Chinese finger traps. Those things that trap your fingers together. Chinese is in the name, and it's like it's no problem. It's like, yeah. That's, they made finger traps. So I don't know which way it goes, but yeah, I guess it's important to set the record straight on this.
Now let's talk about Cluedo, because this is a fun one. The game of Cluedo, which is...
The game of What is Cluedo? What is this? Cluedo? This looks like Clue. What? What? How did this happen? Of all the game differences I expected between the UK and the US, this was not one of them. This is the classic mystery game, Clue. But in the UK, it's called Cluedo? Cluedo? Where did the dough come from? I've never heard of this before. Is that the only difference? We just call it slightly different name? Why?
Is a murder mystery game, was developed in 1943 by a British board game designer.
Oh, it was made by a British person. This game was invented in Britain, or by a British person. So, is Cluedo the real name? And we're out here in America renaming it Clue? Oh no, are we the ones who changed it for no reason? Oh no.
You know it, you've played it, and so have Americans, except we call it Clue and not Cluedo.
Yeah.
The name Cluedo is actually a play on a combination of words, Clue plus Ludo. Ludo is a popular board game that has very old origins, however...
Oh. What is this called in America? This has a different name. This has a different name in America, I think, but okay, this is a combination of names. That's where Cluedo comes from.
In the US, we're not familiar with the name Ludo, as the games that we have that derive from Ludo have other names.
Yeah. Never heard of Ludo.
So the dough was dropped and we just have Clue. There are some other differences.
We just have Clue. The dough, yeah, because we don't have Ludo. Clue and dough, Cluedo. So that's the real name of the game, actually. No kidding. Huh. And we're the ones saying it wrong. I mean, okay, fair enough. That's kind of why I enjoy, learning about this. Sometimes, for most of this stuff, it's just like, we say it different ways, and that's fine. There's no real right and wrong. For this, it's like, the name of the game is Cluedo. And man, I feel kind of bad that we don't even know that here.
Another board game for our list is Monopoly. This is originally an American game and was designed based on locations around Atlantic City, New Jersey.
Monopoly. Monopoly is a very, very, very popular game. I expect around the world. I didn't know it was invented in America. I didn't know Cluedo was invented in the UK, actually. So, is Monopoly called something else in the UK, or?
Our most expensive locations in the American version board are known as Boardwalk and Park Place. Other ones include things like Atlantic Avenue, Marvin Gardens, and St. Charles Place.
Yeah.
But when the game was adopted in the UK, they decided it was going to go over much better if the names were changed to be based around London, which makes sense.
Oh, then in Monopoly, the names of the squares, of the properties, are they too American sounding, or they just thought it would sell better if the names were more British or associated with London? So the name is still Monopoly. That's the name of the game. But the spaces on the board are actually different.
So the most expensive property on the UK board is Mayfair and Park Lane, with other options being things like Oxford Street, Piccadilly, and Leicester Square. The railroad parts are also different, with the US calling them Pennsylvania Railroad, Reading Railroad, B&O Railroad, and
That's right. That's right. There's literally like American states and references in Monopoly. Yeah, okay, this makes sense. This is like the first one that really makes sense why you would adapt like different names and places into the game for depending on what country you're in.
Short Line. In the UK, it's Liverpool Street Station, King's Cross Station, Fenchurch Street Station, and Marylebone Station.
Ah, that's really interesting.
Last up, it's not a game technically, but I thought it was interesting to include here because you do interact with the books in a kind of game-like manner where the goal is to find the hidden person. What am I talking about? Where's Wally in the UK is known as Where's Waldo in the USA.
Where's Wally? Where's Wally?
About Where's Wally in the
When she said, "Oh, you're gonna find the missing person in the book," I was like expecting, I was expecting one thing to pop up, and then Wally popped up. Who is Wally, and what have you done with Waldo? What is the purpose of this? In the UK, it's Where's Wally? And in America, it's Where's Waldo? Very, very, very famous children's book. You try to find Waldo on the page amongst the crowd of people. Very famous. Why? I can't think of why we would have a different name. I wonder who invented if it was Wally or Waldo originally.
The UK is known as Where's Waldo in the USA. Wally in the UK can be a shortened version of Walter or Wallace, but it's commonly used in British slang to refer to a somewhat spacey person, which makes sense because he's gone missing. However, this doesn't
I didn't know that about Wally. It actually means something, that name in the UK. In America, Waldo is just Waldo is just a funny name. Like nobody is named Waldo, actually.
really translate in the US. We don't use the word Wally and that meaning. So when the books were published there in the 1980s, the character was renamed Waldo, which they
Oh my gosh. This is another one. Like Cluedo, where she's saying the real name is Wally. This is a British book. It's supposed to be Wally because the name makes sense for a spaced out missing person. And then it came to America and we changed it to Waldo. Oh my gosh, I never knew. What the heck? This is so weird because these are things that we grow up with in America and we just assume this is how they are for the rest of the world. That it's the right way. And it's like, no, it's Cluedo. It's Wally. It's Knots and Crosses. Oh my gosh, this is quite interesting, I gotta admit. I actually quite enjoyed this video. It's pretty fun. I wouldn't have expected so many random little differences, mostly in the names of things, between games in the UK versus the US. But there we go. Anyway, if you enjoyed this as well, feel free to give this video a like or leave a comment with your thoughts on any of these UK versus US game differences. And if you're interested in more videos like this, me reacting to the UK and learning about UK culture, feel free to subscribe for more. And until then, thanks for watching and see you next time.